Welcome to Glowing Success. My name is Heidi and I am your host. This podcast is for beauty entrepreneurs. Join me weekly as we dive into the beauty industry's ins and outs, from business strategies, top-selling services, and taboo topics. I will be interviewing industry leaders with empowering stories and game-changing insights. Let's illuminate your path to success together. Let's jump into this next episode. Welcome back to Glowing Success. Today, I'm so excited about my episode because the person I'm interviewing, we're going to be talking all about retail. So if you have a hard time selling retail, or if you want to feel more comfortable, or if you want to learn how to double your income, this is the episode to listen to. Her name is Dena, and I will say she is a retail expert and a regional educator, and she is amazing. So I cannot wait. But without further ado, welcome, Dena.
Hello, Heidi.
I love this. I love that.
I know.
This time of year is perfect to have this episode, I will say, because obviously this is the time of year everybody's selling retail. We're talking about it more. But I think this is also a good episode for many people because there is a lot of people that just don't feel comfortable with selling retail. So
absolutely.
If the listener doesn't know who you are, can you go into a little bit about yourself?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited that we could find a time to do this. So hello, everyone. My name is Dena. I am, just like Miss Heidi said, I've been in the industry, the beauty industry, for about a decade now. I knew really what I wanted to do pretty much right out of high school. And so I started in more of the retail selling at Ulta Beauty. And then really where I am now, worked myself into not kind of just mostly expanding on retail sales, education, and bringing more of a medical skincare approach as well. So that's where I'm at now. Been an esthetician for many years, and I met you at the Aveda Institute, and we've stayed connected for many, many years. Can't believe that was in 2015, I think. I believe it was.
I graduated from aesthetics in 2011. Okay. And then I graduated from massage in 2012. Okay. But I used to go back and have like different things with Aveda too. So it's like, I know people either from my actual education there, or I know sometimes people from when I used to go and do like spotlight teaching, or like when they do their senior Saturday or senior day where I could come in. So yeah. Oh my God.
I love it. It's been a while, but yeah. So as mentioned, started in the beauty industry really right out of high school and made my way into being that regional educator and that retail expert. And I love what I do. I love teaching. I love educating. I love skincare. I love beauty. I have all the things. So that's a little bit about me.
I love that. And, educating and uplifting the industry, there's just so much to that. But like, I do feel like a lot of people struggle with retail. I do feel like it's a constant question that, many of us have. I mean, you could be a seasoned professional, have many years under your belt, and have, some weariness with retail sales. You could be right out of school and not really quite understand where your footing is yet. So I think that's why I love this episode too, because I do think it can apply to many people. But like I was mentioning earlier, this is just that time of year too. So I think this is just perfect all around. Now, I always tell people retail can double your income. Like it really can. Like you can, I've known people in my career that I've worked alongside that even most of their paycheck came from the retail sales, which was crazy to think about because, I think when you're just getting out of school, let's say we're talking to those people that are listening, a lot of it's heavily focused on the service, right? Your schooling is so much focused on the service because you got to do the services. But there is an element to retail, I think, that we're kind of missing sometimes. And we kind of mentioned this before we hit record, but I'm a true believer in people buy into brands and they don't necessarily buy into the product themselves sometimes. And I think like that to me speaks a little bit. But if somebody's listening and let's say they are just getting out of school and they're just getting into the industry, what would you say is the biggest tip that they can take away from today's episode and helping them feel more comfortable with selling retail?
Oh my gosh, that is such a good question. And here's the thing, being an educator and talking to so many different enthusiasts and professionals, the biggest thing that I see, especially because I'm talking to seasoned professionals and I'm also talking to people right out of school. So the biggest thing for me would be the more that you can familiarize yourself with not just the trends, but the popular brands that everybody is accustomed to hearing about, keeping up on new things in the industry, but being very, very on a high level educated about what's out there, what people are buying into, and really trying to not necessarily just sell, 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 kind of how, we're taught in school, but really getting familiar with the ways that they're being actually marketed in the industry. And I think a lot of it, just like what you said, if the marketing is lacking, brand presence will also be lacking. And so what that means is you can have an incredible product. However, if you go in and say, "Hey, I have this incredible product," or, somebody's trying to tell you about it, well, cool. I don't know about it. So what's it going to do for me? So I would say when I graduated from school, and especially Aveda. So to all my Aveda peeps listening, we know Aveda is a great brand in general. They've got absolutely beautiful, incredible products. Their marketing definitely specific to a very type of consumer. Not a good or bad thing, just is what it is, right? So coming out of Aveda, I wanted to educate myself on a very global scale of what else is out there. Because then I would have people come to me and say, well, I'm using this in my skincare routine. I'm using this makeup. I'm using that. And then I would say, well, what the heck is that? I need to get familiar with that. So don't lose the fire that you were taught to have in school. But when you come out, keep learning, keep going to shows, keep being involved with other professionals, network, look at other things that are in the industry that are new, or keep yourself familiar with everything that's going on. It sounds like a lot, but I honestly promise you, and I think you could agree, Heidi, that
Yes.
there's so many brands, but honestly, once you kind of figure out how
Yeah.
every brand likes to market themselves, it's pretty easy to catch on.
Yeah. And they all have a lot of similar things, right? We all have a cleanser. We all have probably some kind of, customization, whether it's like vitamin C or retinol or whatever. We all have a moisturizer. It's funny because I think like I don't want to undermine obviously brands in that way because I really want to tell people like, yes, there is definitely some very unique things about brands, right? But they all kind of have similar things too. So if you start noticing those similarities, like you were saying, you can start picking up on ways that maybe people are referencing things. So like if a lot of people, let's say TikTok, right? TikTok's super, super popular. TikTok shop has really taken off in the last year specifically. And so people are exposed to information on TikTok, especially if that's how they, view things on a regular basis. And so sometimes you have to think about, okay, well, they're viewing this. This is what's been popular on that channel or that, social media channel. So how am I going to talk to my client about the thing that I have right in front of them that I used in my service that I'm trying to sell them? I know that they will benefit from and so forth. So I do think that lingo and that language like is so important because then you can transfer that knowledge of how your client is already absorbing it. And I also think this really plays up to like, I'm always talking about building your client rapport. And so I think like, obviously selling retail, one of the things that I've seen over the years is you can't just quickly out the gate try to sell something to somebody the first appointment you give them. Like, don't get me wrong, there's definitely those clients out there that will buy things in that first appointment, right? But I will say like I would think the mass majority of people from just my experience, and maybe you can chime in on this too with your experience, is they probably aren't going to start buying those products from you unless they desperately need it at that day, or they were really intrigued about it that day, or they're just buyers in general, like which we love those. but they're going to purchase the next appointment or the next appointment after that because they have to build that trust with you. You have to build that rapport of finding out what they're about. Like, why are they in? Like, what is their concerns? Like, what are they wanting to correct? Like, what are all the things that make them tick, so to speak? But I do feel like, once you have that rapport built, there's so much easier conversation flow about what you're trying to achieve at that point. Like, and I'm a bit, you mentioned this earlier of like, educating your client in a way that how is it going to help them? How are they going to benefit from it? And that's the quickest thing that you can do. Like I do see online, a lot of people are like, why? It's so hard for me to remember all the ingredients. You don't need to remember all the ingredients. Like you need to remember the ones that maybe the brand is telling you to talk about, right? Because I've had this, and I'm sure you've had this experience too, where you've gone through different education from that actual brand, which I love. And having reps come in and actually give you that education is huge. And like you said, or just educating yourself on other brands is really fun too. But they'll always give you a kind of a key ingredient that's really, sparking interest, or like a key benefit of like, this is going to give you this in this time. So I love that you mentioned that, because I do think like there are, retail doesn't have to be hard, people. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm. Absolutely. And here's the thing. You can really
oh yeah.
overcomplicate. Wow, apparently I need more coffee today. You can really just get into the weeds with things. And
Yes.
especially with educating, because let's be honest,
Yeah.
I have definitely fallen into that trap.
I
Um,
think we all have.
and I think we all have. And there's so many things that we can do to get to the same outcome, but we can really just simplify and then
Yeah.
execute, right? And
Yeah.
act on those things.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I've just started out in my career, and I will say that this is some of the best, I think, learning opportunities that I've actually gone through. So I really would love to share this with the audience here. Hopefully it's helpful. If not, oh well.
It will be.
So, when I first started out, I was so excited about learning about all of the key ingredients, getting nitty gritty into, oh, this is great for this skin type, this skin condition. This is how I use it. And I would quite literally every single break between my clients, I would go out into my retail area. And it was a larger spa, so there were multiple things. I would go out, I would look at the training workbook that brand had left, and I would just memorize every single thing. And I found myself falling into the trap of getting way too caught up in the ingredients. And by the time that I would actually be done with my consultation and do the service and then look at their skin during the skin analysis, right? So I'm speaking as an esthetician. That is really my background. So that's kind of what I'm relating it to. I would look at their skin and I would say, this ingredient's going to be good for you and you can find it in this product. And then they would have no interest, absolutely lost them. And I realized I am forgetting the features and benefits of what the product does. And that's all that your consumer cares about. That is it.
Yep.
That
And how
quite
often they should
literally.
use it. Like a lot of clients, and you have to really go to the basics sometimes, is like, I want you to use this morning, night, whatever you want them to use it. And this is how to use it. And this is what you're going to notice. Like that to me is like, because if you think about how you want to purchase something, so sometimes we do have to take ourselves out of that, the view of being the service provider and really be like a new client somewhere, a new customer somewhere. Like I'm big on that too, of like, have you ever been into a store and try to buy something that you're like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like I
Yeah.
gotta buy this and I don't know anything about it. And the person's going through all this confusing information and then you still feel lost. That's kind of
Hmm.
essentially what your client is going through. Now, when you're talking from an esthetician perspective, like I really like that because for us, we also get to have the client experience it when we're doing a facial. So that is a perk. I will say that. So I hope I didn't cut you off with your train of thought there. I'm so sorry. But can we talk a little bit about like what if you are listening and let's say you work at like a brow bar, or let's say you work at, let's say you just do waxing, or because there's a lot of beauty professionals listening that might not be estheticians and might not have that extra layer of I can have the client actually feel the product. Like what would you suggest? Because I know you come from a retail background, and so that's probably where some of those skills happen too. Because like if a client can't actually put it on their skin, sometimes it's really hard for us to relay some of those things. Like, what would you say? What would you give a tip for the person that's like listening that has that specific perspective?
Absolutely. So, as mentioned, I'm an esthetician. I'm also an educator in aesthetics. However, my background truly comes from I started at Ulta Beauty, worked there for 2.5, 3 years. I didn't become an esthetician until about 2 years in. So, for me, I was working at a counter, I was working with Clinique, I was working with Lancome, I was working in prestige and mass beauty brands. And I would get those people that they would come in, I would ask them, what their needs are. And they say, I'm in the market for a lipstick, or I'm in the market for just a brow product. And maybe they didn't know what they wanted, or it was just, I threw out all my makeup because I had pink eye and I need to start over. Actually would get that a lot, kind of sad, but also very fun because I could start on a blank slate. But if you are unable, like estheticians, to have them maybe see, touch, feel, keep it simple. So let's say, Heidi, you came into me and you said, Dina, I am looking for a really good mascara. And I'm not really sure what I want or which one would work for me. I would really just ask, okay, what mascaras have you used in the past? And you would share with me, maybe you've used a clear mascara, maybe you've used waterproof, those kinds of things. And then I would really just figure out how often are you using it? Really, what kind of mechanism do you like? Basically figuring out what can you actually do on a daily basis that isn't going to involve too much work for you, and what kind of thing you prefer. Is it waterproof? What's your daily lifestyle like? And you don't necessarily need to try it, right? Because after that, it's, what, let me show you. Here's what I think is going to work great for you. What I will say is you are your best advertisement. So I think that is something that even if you cannot physically, cleanse their skin with something or do a full face of makeup, if you can present it in a way that it's something you directly relate to, even if you don't use it, it's not that like you have to actually
I
say,
agree.
hey guys, I use this all the time. Maybe you don't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You can still say, I love this product. Here's why I love it. If you get them excited, they are going to be over the moon excited, and they are going
Yes.
to walk out of there and say, I love this person. I had a great experience and I'm absolutely going to buy this. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. And
Yeah.
that's true for anything.
Yeah. I love I love like trying products, and I think that's one of the reasons I got into the beauty industry is because like, I always had my hand in something. I was always trying something. I was always doing something. So I do think that helps a lot. So if you're listening and you're like, I just love trying products, that's going to help you the most. But
Mhm.
like, yeah, if you can't try something, personally, let's say, or if you haven't tried that, or if, like you said, if you don't wear, like, let's say a waterproof mascara and you're like, I don't have any experience with that, you can start asking some people around you. That's where like having friends in the industry really helps, because then you can get some of their feedback from like, hey, okay, they use that product or they did this. And and so you can give kind of
Mhm.
that perspective of like, it feels like this or it did that, or and
Yeah.
you're going to have a more of an in-depth conversation, which will in turn mean that that client or that person that's in front of you is going to trust you faster, because that's a lot of it too, right? Like you're mentioning, like that trust has to be there of like, why are you talking about this? Number one, have you used this, or do you have any experience with this product? And like, why should I use it? You know what I mean? So like that
Yeah.
journey is so important, but you have to start just getting out there. I think the one thing I've kind of heard you say too, and like just the undertone of like specifically talking to anybody that's listening that needs to feel more comfortable with, retail, let's say, you have to just start doing it. right? Like,
Mhm.
I think for me, and like you have mentioned that your past, how you went into too many of the ingredients right away and so forth. Like, we learn from those experiences, you guys. And so, if you're kind of fumbling around a little bit and trying to find your footing when it comes to like speaking and feeling more confident with like showing them or whatever, that is all going to take time. And sometimes you just have to really go through that process in order to get there. And I will say one of the things that helped me is talking about it. And sometimes I would just literally talk to myself in my car on way to work.
Mhm.
Right? Like I would have one product that I need to focus on that day. Cause like for me, I couldn't, and I'm hoping hopefully some of you guys will relate to this. I couldn't necessarily focus on like every product and learn all the things. And I'm sure you feel the same. So like sometimes I would just focus on like one product that I'm like, this product sells a lot already and it's really popular, but I really do want to get good at selling it myself, right? Like, or I want to get comfortable talking about it. And this is an easy way for me to start forming those words out of my mouth. And like,
Well, here's the
you know,
thing. And so a couple different things. And this was also something very, very helpful that I think everyone should really do on a daily basis. Um, Maybe every 3 days, switch what product you are going to become an expert on. And this, guys, again, working as a regional educator and also kind of knowing and making friends with sales reps. So if you can make friends with a rep, do it. Because truthfully, they're so helpful for many different reasons, but I'll keep it at that for today. What you want to do is rotate your focus. If you've ever been to, let's say, Heidi, you're probably doing this. You probably have, maybe here's my product of the month. If you've ever been to a salon and they say, hey, these are our staff favorites. Why do you think they do that? It's to get you to purchase retail. And that's going to ultimately help them feel like they can connect more with you, and then vice versa, because you're going to say, you know what, I really liked that product. And you're going to say, I want to know on a monthly basis what this person's favorite product is. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, to increase retail and double that income. The
yes,
other thing is going back to how we build rapport. That is really why I think, especially in today's day and age, influencers exist. TikTok shop is so popular. And for me, same thing. I have influencers that I follow that I ultimately trust with product recommendations, with fashion styles recommendations, with things for building my business, daily life. I'm a new mom looking for people who are also new moms. I'm searching for that connection. And I think when we think about retail, we can think about it as, oh, okay, well, it's something I have to do. Well, how about we think about, oh, I would love to have the opportunity to do this, and here's how I'm going to do it and make it very personable. And there's so many ways to do it. So many ways to
yes,
do it. When you just
yes,
break it down and you figure out what works for you, be that expert,
yes,
get out there in the industry, but
yep,
also find people that you feel comfortable with online. That's
yeah.
a, I mean, that's our whole universe right
Yeah,
now.
totally. I know, right? Social media is so fun for that reason. And
Mhm.
also just your local service providers or your local people that you have a lot in common with when it comes to being a service provider in general or just a beauty professional. Like there's something to be said about building community in that way because yes, you can learn. The one thing I want to have people understand too, and this is kind of a tip that I got years ago from a car salesman
I
which
love
is
that.
which makes me laugh out loud because I think it does apply to everything. If a person's in your salon, let's say they're getting a service. So let's say you are an esthetician and they're getting a facial. They're already there wanting you to give them that service, give them that experience. They're also probably wanting you to take care of whatever their concern is, right? So like just have that mindset too of like it helps you understand like these people are already here wanting to purchase. They're already here
Mhm.
wanting to be taken care of. They're already here wanting to solve a problem.
Right.
So that can be, sometimes that helps people be a little bit less intimidated when it comes to sales because or even let's say you work at an Ulta or you work at Target, because Target now has these experience things where you can either have an Ulta inside the Target, or you have a person in the beauty section that's like available for chatting. Or let's say you work, there's so many different ways that people are listening. But I will say, like, that person's already coming to that area. Let's say you do work in retail. They came into that store for a reason. They wanted to
Mhm.
purchase something, right? And so a lot of it is like, yeah, just drawing out what their concern is, or like, what are you trying to, fix, or what do you what are you in for today? And I
Right.
think that's where consultation, so if you're a service provider, that's where consultations really matter, and that's where you really can excel in your consultations in a short period of time. And
Absolutely.
right, like,
Absolutely.
asking the right questions definitely helps, and like understanding like you should be asking a lot of open-ended questions so you're having your client talk more than you. But because a client, they're going to tell you a bunch of stuff. Like, they are there to relax, like they want to kind of unload. Like, I don't know if everybody's had this experience, but a lot of my clients, they come in and they're like, like, they take that deep breath. They also look at us as experts, right? Because I've been having a lot of issues with acne, or I've been having a lot of issues with sun damage. Like, what can I do? I've tried everything. Or, you hear these words. And so that's where you can step in. Or if you have a person that's kind of closed off, because I will say that that's another thing that I hear that's kind of hard, is opening people up. That might take a couple appointments. So if you do have a client that is having a hard time opening up, or they're a little bit more reserved when it comes to spending or whatever, like, just know that that person probably is still there for all these same reasons of buying something, being taken care of, solving a problem, but it just might take a little longer. So that's where your building of your rapport really comes into play. Now, if you work in retail and this is your busy time, because, like, hello, we're buying stuff for the holidays. People are just buying stuff in general. Our skin changes in the winter. There's so many reasons that people are going to purchase a little bit more. But one thing that I will say, and you touched on this, is brands are doing a lot of marketing. So if you have a very popular brand that you carry, or even a small brand, and we can talk a little bit about that too, but like, they are doing marketing. They have done a lot of that work for you. So, like, hop on that, like, if they have shelf talkers, or like if they have, like, like you were saying, if they have a highlighted product that they always have this time of year, or if they have little gift sets that they do, really get used to what they're doing, because that brand is already doing a lot of that work for you. You just need to hop on board of how to, like, present it and talk about it. So one of the things I think we should talk about too is just talking about it. Like, I know I touched on this when we first started here, but talking about it. Just fumble through it, people. But
Mhm.
you have to talk about it, because the one of the things you first said very beginning of this was, people aren't going to know about the product until you mention it, right? They're not going to
Mhm.
know, like, anything. And I'm like this with brands, and I'm like this with business too. Like, people are never going to know you're in business, or people are never going to know that you have this product until you start talking about it. So, like, that is definitely the starting point, I feel like, for a lot of it. What do you feel about that?
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And truly, when we think about consultative selling, it's not just for service providers, it's also for people in the in and out. Meaning the in and out kind of being where I think of this, and I differentiate the two categories, is if you have a 2 hour service on your books, that is not in and out, right? But if you have a 30-minute service, that's going to be in and out. And so, first, you really need to understand your customer. Are they somebody that likes to talk? Are they somebody that likes to just relax and they like to give you all the information either beforehand or at the end? Um, then you can kind of just either educate and recommend around that, but it's not going to be cookie cutter for everybody. And I think that's where even me, I would treat everybody early on in my career as cookie cutter. Oh, everybody wants the same thing. You would go into it with that, but then things start to completely fall apart in front of you. But I think the biggest thing, especially if you're working in retail at a counter in fashion, doing, whatever it is that you do, it's in that 5 seconds of that first impression, getting a good grip on, all right, this is probably what they're in for, right? And understanding not just, oh, what are you searching for today? It's how can I help you find what you need? And asking the right questions is so important, because you're not going to get the right answers if you don't ask open-ended questions. So what I
Yes.
mean by that, and for my estheticians listening too, and I'm just relating it back to that because
Yeah.
hopefully a little spark will go off, because I know it did for me when I learned this. One of the main things that I ask them, it's not what's your skincare concern, because they're going to be like, I don't know how to answer this question. It's when you look in the mirror and you touch your skin, you play with your skin, you feel your skin. What do you see? What stands out to you? Literally no mention of what's your skincare concern. Do you feel you have dry, oily, dull skin? Nobody's going to just say yes. And they don't want you to point it out for you either. So don't do that. But again, I know I'm kind of rambling, but hopefully that gives a little bit more perspective, and you can do it exactly
Yes.
for those in and out people too. What kind of products
Yes.
do you use already?
Yep.
And again, you can say, well, this is what I love. Have you tried this before? Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I would love for you to try this. See, touch, feel, play. Let me know
Yep.
what you think. And then you have that rapport that's building. And then that's educating them, and you're creating an engaging conversation and an experience. And then after that, you close the sale.
One of the things that I really appreciated is when brands had samples or travel
Yes.
sizes, because I'm kind of a person that I'm that consumer, whereas if I'm trying something for the first time and I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know if it's going to work, or I don't know if I'm going to like this, or I've heard all the reviews, I've been sold and whatever. I do like to try it on a smaller scale, whether it be free or not, doesn't matter. I think travel sizes are really, really key to this. But if a company offers sample sizes, that's amazing. But sometimes it's hard because it's deceiving, because specifically with skincare, we know as estheticians, it takes a while for you to notice that return, right? So we have 30 days of where that cell turnover really happens. So unless you're being consistent with something, and that consistency can be a couple of times a week, let's say if you're exfoliating or whatever. So per product, right? Let's say you can't really try something once sometimes and really get that gauge. So, so if you're kind of relying heavily on sampling, because for a while that was my thing, I was like, let me just give a bunch of samples out to all my clients and then they can try it. And even though they've tried it in the room, let's say when I was doing facials, so it is kind of hard in that way. But I do think travel sizes work a little better for this, because they are a little bit bigger than obviously a sample size. So they do kind of give that journey of a 30-day experience. And so what do you think about that? Like, I think,
Mhm.
when it comes to utilizing sales tools, because I would say that these would be kind of sales tools in a way. Obviously, travel sets are very good marketing, but like, how do you feel, when people are kind of relying on that?
That's a great question. I do think that you have to be strategic in your sampling strategy. And I do like that there are brands out there that when you order from them, they give you a very small little thing just to try it. However, I do think that even if brands are giving you samples as a provider of everything, get to know your client, consult with them, and if they are a person that wants to see results and they want to do it quickly, you might be better off really hyping up a deluxe size sample. So just be mindful of how you're actually going about that. I do think that samples are very important, but they have to be utilized and recommended in a very specific way. And again, we're all the experts, right? Um, that's why I like little, very, very, the mini sizes of masks are good for me for skincare, because I can kind of figure out, okay, I'm not going to use a mask all the time. It's not something that I'm going to use every day. Does it feel good? Cool. How does my skin feel when it's on and when it's off? That's all I'm looking at, right? Same as a lipstick, when they give me those little samples, when you buy from Sephora, all I'm looking at is it sticky? Does it stink? And do I like the color? That's all.
And do I react? Do I react to it? I
Hmm.
think, you really touched on this. So if you are listening and you sell more makeup, or if you sell more, like, yeah, the masks are a great example, because I do feel like,
Exfoliators.
yeah,
Hmm.
exfoliators, because those are quick returns. So the client only has to try those things once to know if they really like it, whereas skincare that's actually going to give results, and you mentioned this earlier, is like, what is the client wanting from that experience? And like, are they wanting to actually get results from whatever they're doing? Like for me, for instance, if I wanted to get rid of my acne or whatever, that's not going to be a one-time quick thing. So you do need to, yeah, we're going to go back to the rapport, building that rapport with your client. And you could be as quickly as, if you're selling in a retail setting, asking, getting to know the client a little bit quicker. But there's ways to do that. But I do like this. I think that, companies that have the travel sizes, or like you said, the deluxe minis, which I think is amazing. Hello, deluxe. I love that. I was like, when you said that, I was like, yes, that is like such a good word choice. Like, um, there's something about that. Like the client is tiptoeing into that territory. But if they're tiptoeing into that territory and take even, let's say they purchase your deluxe minis or your travel size, they are already interested at this point. So you have them locked in a little bit. You have them interested. You have them. So let's say they're a service client, and that's what they did. When they come back, you need to put in your notes. I'm a huge one of writing notes, because I think this is what helped me with selling retail too, is like knowing what I talked about, knowing what I sold last time, and keeping my notes for that. So the next time I see you, we can really pick up where we left off, and it's, I can have a little bit better strategy for it. They're already locked into it. So now you need to ask them, how was that? What did you do? Did you try anything? This is where the opening of conversation needs to happen. And this is where a little bit more flow can happen too. And I almost can guarantee, if they had a good experience with trying it, if they did try it, they will buy it.
Yep.
And so there you go. You have that quick little release of, ooh, okay, this worked for me. So there's all different ways that you can sell retail. Like there's all, but you mentioned earlier, really touching on relying on your sales rep for a company. And so this is one thing I really want to talk about, because we've talked about a lot of different reasons why clients buy. We've talked about building rapport. We've talked about, different ways to feel more comfortable. But I think one of the ways you feel more comfortable is finding those outside resources. And we talked about
Hmm.
this, about collaboration with other service providers and other people who may be experts in things that you don't use. But, how are we going to utilize those people that actually work for the companies and actually, you know, represent that company, and this is what they do for a living? And how have you found utilizing them? Like, obviously, if you work for a salon or spa, this will be a little easier because that rep is already coming in and talking to you. But we have a lot of people that are listening nowadays that are solopreneurs, right? Solo entrepreneurs, solo business owners. They work out of a salon suite sometimes, right? So we have a lot of that going on. How can you give that same experience? And, I found that reps definitely still come by and chat with you. But if somebody's like intimidated to reach out to their rep, let's say they opened up their account with a company, but they haven't really utilized all of the things, how can you share about this experience?
Mm. Would you like to know more on a provider perspective on that?
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah, I think a lot of people that are listening are probably providers or beauty entrepreneurs. So, like, I think that coming from the perspective of like, how can we utilize this resource to our best advantage? And like, it's not scary.
No.
That person is specifically hired to do that, people. So utilize that resource. That's kind of what I want to tell people too, right?
Yes. So very early on, my very first job was at Ulta. And at Ulta, we, not we, because I don't work there anymore. Anyway, at Ulta, sometimes when, we would go in, and we as consumers, we go in and we see other people maybe that not, we don't think work at Ulta, but they're actually from that brand that are speaking. Pick their brain. They are there to try and sell the consumer on that specific product. So maybe they're with Pure Minerals. That just came to my mind. That kind of a thing. You're not going to see that for, Maybelline, because that doesn't exist. But if you're
Right.
if you are a beauty rep, and you have an educator come in, or you have somebody who works for the brand, I would truly say they're not scary.
No.
especially because if you are somebody who, and I'm not talking about solo providers, so I'll get
Right.
there in just a moment,
Yep.
but if you're somebody who works on the floor of a Ulta, Sephora, you're probably not the decision maker as far as ordering. So you're kind of, the fun aunt that just likes to be educated and to better your customers, right? Now, I do work with a lot of solo providers. There are still so many resources for solo providers. And the other thing is, this industry is small. And with that being said, there are so many people, so many people. Um, Great example, Heidi and I have stayed connected for many, many years. We do similar yet different things with a little bit of a different focus. And now we're collaborating again. So make sure that if you are a solo provider, you're not alone, even though it has solo in a salon suite, you can still take advantage of networking with other people who are either on a larger scale. You can also reach out to, honestly, anybody that you feel that you want to reach out to, whether they're a completely different service, whether they're similar. It really just keep your options open. Don't be afraid to network yourself. And I think from being, if you are a solo provider, I really think that while the brand presence of reps or educators one-on-one might be a little bit more limited, it's not like they still don't exist. You might need to work a little bit harder to collaborate with them and meet with them.
I agree.
However, don't sell yourself short.
No. And you can always ask questions. So the one thing I learned from, being on both sides, so I had a staff for a while, so I had people working in my spa for a while. So obviously like my rep was a little bit more attentive because I was purchasing more, my account was larger, but I can also speak from being a solopreneur too of like, I just me, myself and I and offering services and working with brands too. And you just need to like kind of be in front of them a little bit more. So maybe send them an email, like, a couple question email. Start that conversation though. So know who your rep is, number one, because sometimes when you're purchasing, there's all different ways you can open accounts with companies. And sometimes it's easy as going online. Sometimes they have you go through a rep in order to purchase. It just depends. I've seen both ways. So that's why I say that. But I would say more often than not, you have to go through a rep, your local rep specifically, to purchase and open an account with the company. And so build that conversation with that rep. I think, that to me, they're there to do that job, number one. But number two, they're there to give you resources in order for you to sell more, because the company is going to benefit if you buy more. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's how
And
that works,
even if you have to go through a local rep, that's not a bad thing, because the in-person rep, while yes, they are also trying to leverage their business, it's definitely a partnership. So, they're going to invest in you if you invest in them. But the investment, so speaking non-monetary, happens when you meet with them. And you can still keep that connection, right? If there's a crazy amount of an opening order that as a solo provider, you just say, you know what, I can't do that right now. It's not like a bridge is burned, right? So reps, and here's the thing, gotta love them. It's a business. They change all the time. The turnover
Yes.
is crazy.
Yes.
And that's neither here nor there. It just honestly
Yes.
is what it is.
Yep.
And so keep that relationship open, because
Yes.
maybe one day you're going to have your own staff.
Yep.
Maybe one day you're going to be um, a bigwig at a really incredible spa, and the rep is going to
Yes.
say, wait, I want to work with you. You
Yes.
never know.
Or
Again, this
reps come
industry
back.
is small.
Yeah, I've had reps from previous companies that I've worked with over the years, and that same rep doesn't work with that company, but we've stayed in touch, and now they work with either a different company or they're doing their own thing sometimes. Like, so I will say, like, building that relationship, you definitely can take you far, because yeah, you never know what that person's going to do or what that company's going to do. I will say a good rep should let you know when they leave. So they should say, hey, this is who I'm passing this off to, or the company itself should really contact you and say, hey, you have a new rep for this area. I will say sometimes that doesn't happen. So that's where you're just going to have to stay on top of it, because times are quick. Like you said, sometimes reps do move on. It's a sales job, and we had a whole episode about this. So look at my previous episode about sales reps. We talked a lot about this in that episode, but I will say, but that is an underutilized resource, is
Mhm.
going to the actual company for some of this information and not just relying on the shelf talkers, not just relying on the marketing that they sent with the package that you just got of all your products. So, keep that in mind. Before we wrap up today, let's quickly talk about, if you're a solopreneur, how do your margins look? So like for me, I'm a big business head. So like I love looking at margins. I love looking at numbers. I love looking at metrics because that's exciting to me. I will say, as a solopreneur, if you're thinking about bringing a product line in, and this is like a beginning conversation for you of like, I need to bring in retail, because obviously you're going to use back bar products, especially if you're listening and you're an esthetician and you offer facials. You have to think about your metrics. So I will say, like, a lot of times in retail spaces, we will go 100% on retail. So you buy it at a wholesale rate, you buy it at a bulk rate usually, and a wholesale rate, and then you will mark that retail product up by 100%. So I will say, like, if this is kind of a new conversation with you, that's how it works. And then generally the companies, they make things accessible for businesses, right? They want you to purchase. Sometimes those larger orders are hard to achieve. So if you have a lot of the larger companies, I will say their opening order is very large. So if you have your eye set on using one of those really top, big companies, just know that you are going to have to save up a little bit to get that opening order. But it could be worth it if you're in an area where the clients really gravitate towards that brand, and you do as well. I would not pass that opportunity. Maybe just save a little bit longer, or whatever you have to do. So think about this when you're a solopreneur too, of when you're selling things and when you're offering things, of like what that actually costs, how to actually put that into play of when you're selling retail and so forth. But okay, so I think we went over a lot today. I think honestly, whoever's listened to this episode all the way through, you guys have some really good information. I think we went over everything that you need to feel more comfortable, everything that you need to know to really center yourself and to sell more retail. But just start doing it. That's probably my one thing and my one takeaway I want you guys to have today from listening. What is one takeaway that you want the listener to go away with today?
Ooh. We talked about so much. Honestly, keep your relationship strong. If there is one thing that I learned, it's anybody who crosses your path in this industry is pretty likely to come back in some way, shape, or form. The other thing is network from the moment that you start in this industry. And that
Even in
starts
school.
in school.
Yeah.
Yes, it starts
Yeah.
in school. Remember features and benefits. When I heard that from one of my connections, still to this day, in how to recommend and sell products, features, and benefits. So what I mean by that
Yeah. Go into
is,
detail of what those are.
yeah, I realized I should have done that. So here we go. So the features, as in that could be key ingredients, right? So usually 2 to 3 is all that you would want to highlight. As far as benefits, what it's going to do for them, what that person can expect. So I'm not going to, talk about a specific product, because that's an exercise that I encourage all of you to do who are listening. But the benefits being, it's going to make your skin feel this way. It's going to give you this result, that kind of a thing. So you can really put that on a universal scale for quite literally anything that you're selling. And then the margins too. I usually recommend breaking it down by, your number of clients. If you see 100 clients, and then you want to look at your wholesale, what does that cost? How many times do they purchase it? Here's your annual sale, then calculate your profit. And so you can make a very easy calculator in Excel. There's a lot of templates that are very easily accessible. If
Google
you're
spreadsheets
considering,
too.
thank you.
Mhm.
if you're considering a certain brand or you're kind of doing a little analysis, that's a really easy thing to look at, because then you can say, is this actually realistic for me?
Yep.
So
Yep.
that might not be one thing, but I
Yep.
think features, benefits is huge.
Yep.
Making sure that you're keeping those relationships strong, and it starts really when you start.
Yes. And I think features can also include how easy it is to use. Like I always tell
Mhm.
people, like, even if you're selling a cleanser, this cleanser is going to whip up into a foam really easy. It's going to feel fresh. It's going to, you know what I'm saying? Like those can be some of those things too. So,
Absolutely.
but yeah, get to know the product, start thinking about those, those things,
Mhm.
and get used to the lingo, get used to speaking it out loud, practice in your car, practice whenever you can, practice on the front desk person, whatever you got to do to
Yeah.
start getting more familiar, and you will be on your way to selling more retail.
Mhm.
Dena, thank you so much for all of your information today. If anybody is listening and they're interested in following you, where can they follow you? And of course, I will put this in the show notes, you guys.
Ah, so sweet. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Heidi. This was a pleasure. So my Instagram is at Aesthetics by Dena, with an ES, and that's where you can find me.
All right. And of course, I'll put in the show notes. And I thank you for coming on again. And thank you for listening, everyone. I hope you liked that episode and found something useful or a tip that you can use immediately. If you are wanting more marketing tips, business tips, or anything like that, I have a lot of resources on my website. So I have PDFs that you can download for free. So look in your show notes. There should be a link in the show notes that you can click on, and it'll take you right to my coaching website. And thanks for listening.